Hello dudes, dudettes, duders, and everyone in between, and welcome to How to Do Everything So You Don't Have to. I'm your host, Jesse Kester. Today, we will be covering the basics of how to use an analog 35mm film camera like this one. We're going to go over all the functionality that you will find on any camera like this one, and we'll also cover how to load 35mm film into this thing. Let's get right into it so that you can get back to taking fantastic photos. The wonderful thing about 35mm analog photography is that if you can learn the basics for a camera like this, you can shoot on pretty much every 35mm analog film camera that has ever been released over the last 100 years. All you have to do is know the basics and then you're set to jet in a red Corvette. So let's cover those basics. There are two key components to any 35mm analog film camera like this. The first is the lens, and most of these can easily be removed. We're going to do that right now and set it aside. And then there's the body. Right behind the lens, you'll see a mirror, and this is the mirror that covers the reflex part of single lens reflex cameras. What it's doing is bouncing the light up into the viewfinder, so whatever you see through the viewfinder is exactly what you're going to see on film. You can see that I'm not covering up the mirror right now, but when I cover it up with my hand, the viewfinder also goes dark. And I'm just covering the mirror, and that is enough to make the viewfinder dark. The next part of this camera that I want to focus on is the film chamber. And to access the film chamber on this camera, we're going to pull up the film winder and pull it up even a little bit further, and then this pops open ever so gracefully. This is where your film canister goes. You pull the film across, and then you feed it into this part here, and you can see as we wind, all of these parts wind automatically together, and it pulls the film across and then takes an exposure. One thing that I'm not really showing off right now, but I will in this moment, is the shutter opening and closing. You can see this piece of cloth here, and that blacks out the film chamber. When I push the button, for just a moment, you can see what's on the other side. We're going to slow this down. It's at 1/60 right now, but I'm going to take it to 1 full second. So now that will be open for an entire second, and you can see the table. Just to demo that a little more clearly, those are my fingers. So all this is doing is opening up that piece of cloth that blacks out the film chamber to allow light through. That light hits the film and then it's exposed. Simple as that. Let's close this back up and rebuild it, and then we'll start talking about how to load the film. That was the basics of the camera. Let's load some film. For this video, we're going to be loading 1 canister of Kodak Ultramax. I really like Kodak Ultramax because I used to shoot on Kodak Max, but I found that it was insufficiently ultra. So when they released Ultramax, me and my bros were absolutely stoked. The first thing you're going to want to do before you load the film is to open the box and tear off this little flap. You might notice that there's a window on the back of your 35mm camera. This is built for one purpose and one purpose only. It is designed to hold that little flap of paper so that you can refer back to it and know exactly what kind of film you're shooting on. This is Kodak Ultramax 400, and we've got 36 exposures. Now this is important information. We need to change the ISO to 400. This camera has one of the weirdest ISO adjustments I've ever seen on a 35mm camera, and I can demo it in one of 2 ways. The first way is upside down, and the other way makes me cover all the important information with my fingers, so we're going to demo it in the first way. Now what you'll see is over on this side of the lens, there's a little silver button, and it's very small and it helps if you have fingernails, but you depress that button. Then over here, you can see that we have ASA, and just so you know, ASA and ISO are the same thing. So we push down that button, and then we have to rotate the silver ring to change the ISO. And you can see that it's changing there. It's very small, very hard to read. We're going to set that to 400. I think I got it to 400. Is that correct? Let's turn it right side up and see if we can see that. No, that's ASA 100. This was not designed to be used. So I'm just going to switch it to 400. And then you can see that we are now at ASA 400, which is exactly what we're shooting on. With the ISO of the camera set, we are now ready to load the film. Let's do exactly that. First thing we're going to do is pull the film out of the canister, And next thing we're going to do is pop open the back. And you do that by pulling this up and then pulling it up even further. You could hear the click on that one. All right. When loading film, first thing you do, you pull that up so that you can put the film in. Then you push it back down until you feel it grab. You'll see inside that there's a bit of a notch in there. You see how that notch works? And that notch is reflected in the top of the film canister. So you want that notch to grab onto those two little teeth inside of the film canister. Let's pull that back up and there we go. Push it down and you will feel it grab the teeth. Next thing you do is you pull the film across and you slide it in to the take-up reel. And then you wind it. You make sure that it's catching on those teeth there. And that seems to be catching. We're going to do another one. I don't like that. It doesn't feel entirely even, but we're going to go for broke on this and take another exposure. Now, the film is in the camera. One thing I like to do is take your wind reel and pull that back until you feel that the film is taut. This will make sure that the film is winding correctly. Watch what happens. So we're going to wind it, and you can see the wind wheel moving as I pull this lever over here. Now when we take an exposure, we know that a new piece of film is behind that gate. Let's do one more. And now the film is ready to shoot. So we're going to close that up. After you've shot your full reel, there's a little button down here. You push that, and that allows you to wind the film back. And winding is as simple as pulling this lever out and spinning it around a whole bunch in a circle. Of course, there are like a million billion other things you need to know before you shoot a successful roll of 35mm film. I just wanted to get you started with film loading and the basics of understanding what this camera is. Of course, if you have any questions, please leave them in the comments below and we will answer them as soon as we get back from shooting this roll. If you liked this video, do the usual like and subscribe and click the bell for notifications. If you want to know more about who we are and what we do, please go to thiuphoto.com or you could go out and take some amazing photos right now. Bye.